Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Okay, today I want to talk about the recent allegations that have come out against Jeffree Star about his possibly trafficking young men for OnlyFans and other things like that. These allegations have come out. I was sent this by several people, and I kind of put it to the side for a couple days. I didn't really know if I wanted to make a video about it. But I think the bigger picture, the deeper discussion around this is really important. And I think it's something that we actually need to talk about. And I'm kind of surprised by a couple things. Number one, I'm kind of surprised that more people are not talking about these allegations coming out, because Jeffree Star has had a past history of similar allegations like this that have come out. Number one. Number two, because of his interactions with James Charles and the allegations against James Charles in the past, and then James Charles coming out and apologizing to his victims and then taking that video down. And Jeffree Star was a huge part of that whole situation and had a lot to say about James Charles at that time. The other thing that I'm surprised about is that the people that I have a few of the people that I've seen talk about it are talking about it in a very kind of like humorous, humorous manner. And I guess the joke is missed on me. Even Jeffree Star kind of got in this TikTok and talked about his go-to, that anytime he has any allegations come out against Jeffree Star, he always just says, I'm going to call my attorneys and all this kind of stuff. But he's like, doing his makeup and the music's playing in the background, and it's very lighthearted. I don't know. For me, I guess the joke is kind of missed on me. That either way, okay, I think they're very serious allegations. To just, pop up in a TikTok and be like, yeah, well, I have lawyers, I'm going to call my lawyers. And I also think that the discussion around it is, I don't know, for me, I feel like it's interesting, because I've been on YouTube doing videos covering drama commentary, which I don't consider this necessarily drama, but covering stories like this for 8.5 years, and it seems like it just keeps on getting darker and darker and darker. And I think this is kind of part of the discussion that I want to have. It's like, when I started doing drama commentary, and there really weren't a lot of people that were doing it at that time, especially in the beauty influencer community, there was like 3 of us. And when I started doing it, big drama, big scandal stories was, like Patrick Star rolling his eyes in a meet and greet, or, Manny and Jeffree releasing palettes on the same day. And that was a big scandal back in the day. And as time has gone on, it's gotten darker and darker and darker. I think that, it's very similar to Hollywood, and I think it's very similar to the film and music industry. Something that Jeffree Star has said, that he is very much, a part of the music industry, that, all these rappers and people are constantly, dipping into his DMs. And he just said in a TikTok not too long ago that if he told you all the people that, that were on the down low and things like that, that all these rappers that had reached out to him. And so, I think that when we see what's happening in Hollywood, and we take those things very, very seriously, right? Like the Diddy party situation. That's horrible, right? It's horrible. And the Epstein files and all of that. And we take that very, very seriously. But when it comes to influencers, I don't know if it's because we don't hold them in the same regard of power that we would, but the power differential is similar, right? I don't know if, and not necessarily exactly the same, but there's still power there. You're talking about people that have 10, 20 million subscribers, on YouTube, not to count TikTok, Instagram. And the other thing I think is that we forget sometimes is that when you're talking about influencers versus these huge celebrities, right, is that influencers have a very easy way to, like James Charles, contacting people that are just sitting in the middle of New Jersey or Oklahoma, direct messaging him. He can have instantaneous contact with somebody. So I think that it's a broader discussion. I think it's interesting when I've watched this, and, I've seen horrific scandals like this happen in Hollywood for the last 20, 30 years, longer than that, really. And taken very, very seriously. And, the cancellation of, Kevin Spacey and other people that's, Bill Cosby and, and now Diddy and things like that. These very, very serious allegations, that are looked into. And with the influencer space, I've never really understood this, in all honesty. I've never really understood why it's almost kind of like a personal favoritism. Like, if I like this person, then I don't believe any of the allegations. And if I don't like this person, then of course I believe all the allegations. It's very much like popularity contests in high school. It really, really is. You know, it's like when the James Charles allegations came out, you could see people that stood by James Charles and they would say, I love you, James. I don't believe it. There's no truth to it. When there was absolutely evidentiary fact that had happened. James Charles came out in a video and was a self-proclaimed predator in his video, which has been re-uploaded on YouTube. You could go watch it right now. You know, Colleen Ballinger, you know, there's evidence all over the place of direct messages and text messages she was having, asking inappropriate questions, having inappropriate conversations. And yet today there's still people on Colleen Ballinger's videos that are like, I love you, Colleen. There's nothing that you could do wrong. And it's always been very strange to me. And I've said in a lot of my videos, you know, that if this were your brother or your sister or your nephew or your niece or your grandchild or your neighbor or your student, you know, or a friend or your friend's brother or sister, I don't know that the response would be the same way. But then we talk about this idea of, you know, parasocial relationships. And I think that parasocial relationships sometimes are like, you know, like, I really like this person. You know, they got me through a hard time and whatever. But that's the extremity of parasocial relationships. I mean, it's the extreme of it, right? Like, where you are willing to look past anything that could possibly be true, never question it whatsoever, because of your undying love of somebody that you know nothing more about than what you've seen on your phone screen, your TV screen, your iPad screen, or your computer. I mean, that's just the truth. And so it's baffling to me sometimes when I see this stuff come up, and it's like, it's not like nobody really cares, or we make jokes about it. Or, I mean, back in the day, the question was, is this joke too soon? And people would say yes. And now it's just like, the second it happens, people are making jokes, and the joke's never too soon, right? I don't find trafficking and abuse, I don't find those things, predatory allegations, I don't think those are funny whatsoever. On either side, I don't think that they're funny. You know, whether you're the victim or the one that's alleged to have done it, I don't think it's funny on either side. And I'm sure for those of you out there that have been in those situations, I'm sure it's not funny to you. So I don't know. I just don't understand it. And, you know, like I said, covering beauty influencer drama and drama through the years, you know, covering it from the beginning of beauty influencer space with Patrick Star rolling his eyes, or Manny and, you know, Jeffree releasing their palettes on the same day. And then, you know, what happened was the situation which happened with Dramageddon. And people say all the time, people don't care about Dramageddon anymore, and why are we still talking about it? People should care about Dramageddon. They really should. Because we talk about history repeating itself. You know, I was watching some TikToks today covering this situation. There's really not a lot of people covering this whole situation about Jeffree Star. But I saw a couple TikToks come up, which I'm going to get to in a second here, because I didn't love the language that was used in that. But it was interesting because one TikTok I watched said that Jeffree Star is doing all this kind of stuff to try to get Dramageddon from 2016 to start all over again. Well, I think if you really look at Dramageddon from 2016 to now, the reason why Jeffree Star is so bitter and says things like James and Toddy ruined the beauty industry space and stuff is because Jeffree Star is smart enough to understand that Dramageddon of 2016 was beneficial for the drama channels. It wasn't beneficial for the beauty industry. It didn't help the beauty industry at all on YouTube, influencer space. It really was the beginning of the end of the beauty space on YouTube as we know it. Do I think that he wants a repeat of that? No, I don't. I don't think that Jeffree Star in any way, shape, or form wants a repeat of what happened and the allegations that came out, because we're also in a different time than we were. So I can remember when the first allegations came out, or the first part of Dramageddon came out, and it was Manny and Laura and Nikita Dragun and Gabriel Zamora on the brand trip when they all flipped their finger at the camera and said, "Bitch is better without us," referring to Jeffree Star. Okay, now it's 2025. Let's think about that in retrospect. That was a huge moment in time. 4 influencers on a brand trip flipping off the camera like the Kardashians, saying bitch is better without us. That was literally what set off Dramageddon. Okay, I think people forget this sometimes. That is so inconsequential compared to everything that has come out since then. Okay, so that happens, and then they come back, and then it's this full-on battle between all of them, right? And then people start looking into, you know, Manny MUA and Laura Lee, and then they find these, you know, things from years ago, and then they have to address this, and that's Laura Lee's famous apology video. And it's back and forth, and then Gabriel Zamora can't decide which side he sits on. And then Jeffree Star comes out against Gabriel Zamora, then Gabriel Zamora comes back and makes, you know, the whole thing is a mess, right? And then the James Charles allegations come out. And this was in August. This is the following year that the James Charles allegations come out, right? And so, and I think people also forget that the Coachella allegations came out about James Charles before the allegations from Toddy Westbrook came out. So the James Charles allegations come out. Now, as a drama commentary channel, I stepped aside at that point because it was really, really dark. And that is not the stuff that I enjoy covering over here. I do not enjoy covering these kind of videos. I think it's important to have these topics. They are not fun for me. That's why I didn't bring up the fan today and sing the song and all that kind of stuff, because I think these are important conversations to have. But that was an era that I in retrospect, I wish I had made videos. I think that I had maybe a different voice to offer at that time. I think there was a lot of great coverage that was going on. I think there was a lot of not great coverage that was going on. But, you know, I stepped aside. And so all of that stuff was going on with the allegations of James Charles. And that got really dark. Then people started doing deep dives into James Charles and Jeffree Star. I mean, these huge hour-long deep dives, huge investigations where people were looking up stuff from years and years and years ago, right? And so then the James Charles stuff, the Toddy stuff comes out. Then there's the Jeffree Star and the Davi Vanity stuff that comes out. We can't forget that, right? And Jeffree Star is just kind of, you know, swipe that under the rug. And we're just, I mean, all the allegations against Jeffree Star are always kind of forgotten. You know, I think that people just don't want to ever remember any of the allegations. Articles, huge articles that have been written about Jeffree Star and all of these allegations that have come out. That, I mean, very serious allegations against Jeffree Star. So, you know, what happened then from 2017 to, I would say, about 2022, 2023, was that it just got darker and darker and darker. And you would see, I mean, I use these titles in my thumbnails too, like exposed and canceled and whatever. But it was like every title, and I'm just making this up in my head. I don't know if somebody has this title out there, but it would be like the dark side of Jeffree Star exposed with evidence. And it would be this 2-hour deep dive, you know, or this 40-minute deep dive. It was no longer just commentary of us just talking about Patrick Star rolling his eyes. It was, you now had to bring 200 receipts that was proven evidence, okay, that this person was a horrible person. But then the popularity contest still continued, right? And the people that liked James Charles stuck with him. And James Charles got his numbers back up again. And the people that liked Jeffree Star, they stuck with Jeffree Star. And what happened was that these allegations that to most of us in our real life, okay, whatever side you see it on, if they were allegations that were made about you, or that you had a victim in your family, or you were a victim, you would take those things very seriously, are now all of a sudden so watered down that they have no meaning anymore. Absolutely no meaning anymore. It's one of the reasons why years ago, I haven't said this in a long time, but as a victim growing up of bullying that has greatly affected my life, it was one of the reasons why I got so tired of hearing the word bullying being thrown around online constantly. You know, like, it was like Jaclyn Hill would, you know, somebody would criticize something and she'd say, they're bullying me, the people are bullying me. And I'm like, I don't know. Bullying for me was having somebody, you know, follow me home in their car and drive right behind me in in my driveway and threaten me if I didn't do certain things. That felt a lot like bullying, okay? Bullying for me felt like my physical safety was at cost every single day that I went to school. Bullying for me, you know, when I've had other people that have reached out to me, is where they don't even feel comfortable going to family reunions or family get-togethers because their family is so toxic and so cruel to them. The names they call them, the things they do to them, you know, the love that they withhold from them, the neglect that they've shown them through the years, you know. So bullying, and that can happen in friend groups and workplaces. It doesn't just happen to kids like it did to me. It also happens to adults. The word bullying got used so much, okay, that it just got watered down and it had no meaning anymore. It's the exact same thing that happened to the word gaslighting. It's the exact same thing that happened to the word, it's happened to the word, you know, all these different words that's happened to. Narcissistic, that's, I mean, everybody was narcissistic in 2021 and 2022. That's just a reality. Every commentary video they'd see, oh, they're a narcissist, this person's a narcissist, that person's a narcissist, right? Without realizing that narcissist is actually a clinical term. So, you know, it was like all these terms we've thrown around, okay? Now, the term that we're throwing around is trafficking. And it's taking away a lot of the meaning to the point where somebody calls in a TikTok. I mean, if this had happened in 2017, this is the thing, okay? If this TikTok, which TikTok didn't even exist in 2017, but let's just say, if somebody had made a YouTube video, okay, in 2017, accusing Jeffree Star of trafficking him, Jeffree Star would be forced, I mean, it would have been such a huge deal. Jeffree Star would have been forced to come out and actually address it in a video. He wouldn't have just got in 2 seconds of a TikTok and been like, I have lawyers and blah, 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 whatever. That's not how it would fly, right? And I'm watching all this go on, and I'm like, the really sad thing about all this is all of the victims of abuse, all of the victims of perpetrators, all of the victims, all of the people that have unfairly been accused of those things, okay? But mostly all the victims, and most of them not perfect victims. I mean, I'll be talking about that later this week with Tana Mojo. Not perfect victims. We want perfect victims in our society, right? Like, this is something I've talked about in past videos. If you don't look like the perfect victim, then the believability of your story is just shouldn't be trusted. I mean, that's the world that we live in today. And now these words are just thrown around all the time that there really isn't any meaning to it, you know? And I'm watching these TikToks today, and I'm watching this guy talk about, I don't know who it was 2 different TikToks that I saw, where they were talking about this guy that came out that, that alleged that Jeffree Star had trafficked him. And I didn't really even, to be honest with you, like I said, I'm going to play it for you, but I don't even really understand the allegations. But he said he sex trafficked him and was trying to pimp him out, all this kind of stuff. I saw a couple of TikToks where they were covering it, and they were saying that Jeffree Star should go get STD testing because this guy, you know, supposedly has HIV. And I was like, okay, wait a second. Now, we have members, okay? This is where you miss me with this shit. You miss me with this, okay? I am 52 years old. I'm going to be 53 in June, okay? I came out in 1990. So this is an education lesson for those of you that did not live the experience that I lived, all right? Because people always want to tell me what my experience is. This is my lived experience as a 52-year-old gay man, all right? That fought for my rights to get married, all right, in the United States, that fought for every right that I have as a gay man in this country. When I came out in 1990, okay, I came out into a world where in the state of Indiana where I live, you could be fired for being gay. And we're going back to that, right? Okay. Where gay marriage was not legal. It wasn't even a discussion. I don't even remember in 1990 ever even thinking that I could possibly be married to somebody down the road. The life that I live today, okay, of sitting on the front porch talking to my neighbors and going out to dinner with my husband and planning trips and sleeping next to him every single night in a bed with a flannel comforter and calling ourselves husbands was not something that I even realized was a reality. Okay, because gay men, as well as many marginalized communities, were treated lesser than, all right? So it was nowhere even on my mind, and nor most of my friends. I don't remember ever discussing gay marriage at that time, all right? But I came out in 1990. I've shared this a lot. I came out into a world where the gay community they were the ones that were trying to take back the control of HIV and AIDS because so many people have been lost. I think that people sometimes, and I did too earlier on, forget the timing of when AIDS happened, you know, and that it actually was started in the 70s. When I came out in 1990, it was literally about the beginning of the end of the massive AIDS crisis that was going on in the United States. Like, when I came out, I would go to gay bars in Indianapolis, and people would talk about all these people that had passed away from AIDS. I never met these men. I wish I had. You know, an entire population of men, of artists, of doctors, of attorneys, of fathers, of brothers, of children, of friends, you know, of possible writers and scientists, just good people out there, neighbors, you know, that were lost to this horrific disease. Now, in 2025, I'm on TikTok, and I'm watching gay men, all right, use HIV as a weapon against somebody that's coming out and making an allegation against Jeffree Star. I'm not saying that I believe or I don't believe these allegations. All I'm saying is, why are we going to HIV as a weapon in our own community? That, to me, is confusing. That, to me, is sad, all right? That is like, are we trying to divide our community? Right? Like, I'm so confused by it. It makes me so sad. It makes me so sad. I mean, you know, I have had so many friends of mine through the years. You know, I've had that. that used against me since I've been on YouTube. I've had people come out and say things to me about like, oh, you know, like, you sick AIDS person, this and whatever. I've said this before, okay? If that were my story, but for the grace of God, it's not, all right? And I have no idea why. I have absolutely no idea why. You know, it could have happened to me just like it happened to so many people that I know. You know, it's not a judgment call. It's not because I was smarter than anybody else. Hell, I started going out in the midst of my addiction, you know? I started going out when I was, 18 years old. I got sober when I was 22 and a half. Half the people that I slept with and went home with, I didn't even remember the next morning when I woke up. You know, it could have happened to me more than, just as much as anybody else. And it's not a judgment call. It's not a bad person thing. We're going back to this mentality. Within our own community now, I'm seeing people say it, where it's like, we're using that as a weapon. What is going on in this world where we are using, I mean, this is literally like when I used to go to Pride Days, in 1990, and you would see the people from the churches, Westboro Baptist Church and things like that on the side of the road with poster boards saying that we deserved it. Now we're using it as, we're weaponizing it. It's baffling to me, this world that we live in today, right? That we don't take allegations seriously at all, to even have a discussion about it, all right? I'm not in the business of believability or not. That's not my business, It's not my business to say, I think this person is telling the truth or I don't think this person is telling the truth. I think it's a discussion that we need to have. I think the fact that Jeffree Star responded to this, and I know when people say this, they'll say he's an unbothered queen. An unbothered queen about allegations of trafficking in the world of P. Diddy that we live in right now, those are pretty serious allegations to just take so lightly. For any of us, and this is the thing. This isn't the first time, and I think the problem is that with James Charles, when the first allegations hit, everybody listened to him. When the second, and I think sometimes, go back and watch the video. I mean, at the end of the video, he says, and to my victims, he calls them his victims. And then he took the video down. What happened was, after that, there were all these allegations that came out. Some of them were found to be true. Some of them were found to be false, right? And all this stuff happened, and then the Colleen Ballinger situation happened, and it was this popularity contest of who I like and who I don't like, and all these victims out there got lost along the way. I'm not talking about the victims of James Charles and the Colleen Ballingers. Yeah, they did, but I'm talking about just you guys out there that are victims, people that this is their lived experience, this is their story. Somewhere along the way, it got important, and then it lost importance, to the point where I think that there's a lot of people whose stories are being taken and it's not their story to be taken. I don't know. It makes me sad, And so I think that the treatment that we discuss these things in is also in how things move forward. Because what ended up happening was that James Charles, it was one allegation after another after another. James Charles would get in videos or TikToks and he would make jokes about it, okay? And I said this with Colleen Ballinger. I said she's going to start making jokes about it with her ukulele, which she has done, because James Charles started making jokes about it. Tony Westbrook called him out and said, and you did it at my birthday dinner. And then somebody gave him a cake on his birthday 2 years later. And it said on the birthday cake, and you did it at my birthday dinner. And he put it on his Instagram, okay, that his friend gave it to him. And he laughed and he thought that was funny. He thought at that time, 2 years later, to laugh at allegations of predatory behavior were funny. What he was doing was he was opening the door for all of his fans to realize, we can joke about this now. My friends are posting on their Instagram. Hell, Daniel Prater's got it on his Instagram to this day. He put it on his Instagram. Other influencers shared it on their Instagrams as well. What that meant was, it's okay to joke about this now, all right? Well, I'm not really sure that was up to James Charles, all right? If James Charles had held true and said that none of the allegations were true and blah, 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 whatever, that's not what he did. James Charles came out and apologized to his victims, all right? Not in one video, but in 2 videos. I think that people forget that. James Charles took that video down and he came back in another video and reiterated the things he said. That video was still up on his channel. So then what it did is it started muddying the waters. And then there was all these videos that came out with all these receipts and things like that. And then you couldn't even talk about it if you didn't have 400 receipts to back it up. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Which is one of the reasons why a lot of victims don't ever come out and they don't ever report it to the police. I mean, this go-to, and I've said this for a long time, this discussion of, if it were true, you would go to the police, all right? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, as an addict in recovery that got sober at 22 and a half years old, When I was actively using, if something like that had happened to me, I would not have gone to the police, okay? I would have known before I ever stopped in there. First of all, I was afraid of the police. Number two, okay, I had already had charges with the police for drug situations and drinking situations. Number three, I knew the believability of me walking in there as one person sharing my story, okay, against somebody that was more powerful, because we have to talk about power differentials, that wasn't going to happen. I also see this discussion that consensual adults and consensual things like this, well, adults can be groomed. Adults can, be trafficked. I mean, it happens every day in our world, not just our country, not just in the United States, but it happens all around the world that adults are groomed and adults are trafficked. I think that's a misunderstanding of that. So I think that what happened is the watering down. James Charles is to thank for why so many people are continuing to have careers today. And I said it 3 years ago, and I wasn't the only one that was saying it. But the reason why Colleen Ballinger is able to continue to thrive today on her YouTube channel, and the reason why, and she had inappropriate conversations with minors. She was not trafficking anybody. I want to make that clear. But the reason why, when these allegations come out now, okay, that people don't take them as seriously as they would have 6 years ago is because there's so many allegations and it's so watered down, And so I want to look in here really quick. And I pulled up, because I think the true definition, and even when I was reading it, I was reading like all of these like court statutes about trafficking and the definitions of it, and it talks about these different words they use. I'll be honest with you, like it goes pretty deep to just be throwing these words around this way and that, right? I mean, so does gaslighting. I mean, we throw the word gaslighting around. I think that people think that gaslighting has a simple definition. It doesn't at all, okay? And to be the victim of somebody that's gaslit you, or to be the victim of a narcissist. I have friends of mine, all right, that literally were married or engaged or in relationships or had parents that were literally clinically defined narcissists. It goes a lot deeper than just go, well, they're egotistic, so they're a narcissist. These words are losing meaning because we throw them around towards who we like and towards who we don't like, all right? And it's dangerous. So I looked in here because I wanted to look it up, and when you look up here, there's so many definitions, but it says in here, sex trafficking is human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Perpetrators of the crime, because I think that the understanding is that it is just like somebody is kidnapped and then taken to another country and sold or, prostituted, pimped out. That's not necessarily the only categorization of trafficking. And I want to make that clear, because I think that people don't understand that sometimes. I don't even know that I fully understand it, all right? Sex trafficking is a human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Perpetrators of the crime are called sex traffickers or pimps, people who manipulate victims to engage in various forms of commercial sex with paying customers. People who manipulate, this is important, okay? People who manipulate. Now, people that are in power positions have the ability to manipulate easier because they can use their power. James Charles actually came out in his video and said that he understands the power differential. The power differential is important. And what I'm talking about there is that even if you have two people that are the same age, okay, that somebody that is more powerful or has more money, or, like this happens all the time in work situations. You talk about harassment on the job, okay? That a boss to an employee kind of situation. This is what we're talking about, all right? People who manipulate victims to engage in various forms of commercial sex with paying customers, all right? So when you then go up and you look up what is commercial sexual activity, all right? It says on here, and this is from this legislature document, commercial sexual activity means any sex act or sexually explicit performance by which anything of value is exchanged. So basically what the allegation is that somebody is saying I was manipulated or coerced into doing sexual acts for money that I didn't want to do. Now, the reason why this is interesting for me, okay, is that in Tana Mojo's podcast that she did with Jeffree Star, Jeffree Star insinuates and talks about the situation with the birthday dinner, okay? And he says that James Charles, and he says this in Tana Mojo's podcast, he says that James Charles coerced this waiter that was straight to his hotel room. When the waiter said, I don't want to do this, James Charles said, Jeffree Star said this. This is from Jeffree Star's mouth on the Tana podcast, canceled with Jeffree Star. James Charles said, what do you mean? I paid for this, okay? And you can't tell him what Jeffree's saying if he means they paid for the room or if he paid for whatever. But basically what Jeffree Star is insinuating there is that James Charles is saying to this person, I paid money and the battery stopped. But basically what Jeffree Star is insinuating is that James Charles is saying that he paid for this action to happen. Well, that is alleging that, and I saw other videos out there that people have said this long before me, that is alleging that Jeffree Star is alleging that James Charles was trafficking people. I mean, it is, or, you know. So he's also alleged this to other people. I do think it's weird that this allegations, and many of these allegations that are coming out right now, are coming out 4 months after Jeffree Star has announced that he is starting a pay-for sex site, which it's the beginning of March, and we still haven't seen anything from that yet. I thought that, I mean, you know, this is the thing with Jeffree Star, okay? Jeffree Star lies out of his teeth. I mean, he says, I'm going to hire attorneys. Listen, I said this in my video the other day, okay? And I'm being serious about this when I say this. This whole video is serious. No jokes today in this video. Jeffree Star in everything, from the thieves breaking into his factory and stealing makeup from him, there's no lawsuit. You can't find a lawsuit on that, okay? All these different things that he has said on Twitter years ago, in YouTube videos, in interviews, that he has all these attorneys, that he's going to hire, blah, blah, blah. I know Jeffree Star has one attorney. I know that. So I talked to him years ago, so I know that. I don't know that he has teams of attorneys. He might have teams of attorneys, but I've never seen a lawsuit. I've never seen, and the thing is that Jeffree Star is the first person that would come out and say, I filed this lawsuit and I won. I've never seen a lawsuit from Jeffree Star, okay, about these situations. For him just to come out and just throw that out there. That's his go-to with it, right? Which, to me, the reason why I'm pointing this out is that through the years, what it shows is his lack of seriousness about any of these allegations. About any of the allegations. Oh, well, I've got attorneys. I'm going to sue these people. Well, you said that 6 years ago, and there's no lawsuit. So are you taking this just as seriously as you took those lawsuits that you never filed? Because I think these are pretty serious allegations. To just get in a TikTok and say there's no truth to this whatsoever. He probably doesn't want to bring a lot of attention to these allegations, because if he brings attention to it, people are going to start looking into it and be talking about it more, all right? That's probably what he's wanting to do. So, you know, when I'm watching all this go down, I'm just like, we are where we're at today with this situation because of all of what has happened through the last couple years. And it's baffling, and it's sad to me that what we consider high drama or high scandal now, and then it's the beating down of the person in any situation. We saw this happen with Colleen Ballinger. The victims were torn apart. Even victims that had absolute evidence, okay, were torn apart by grown adults. At that time, you were seeing 20-year-old kids that were torn apart by adults online, death threats by adults online, okay? Because of what they came out and said about Colleen Ballinger with factual evidence. So anyway, I want to show you this clip that I was sent. Rich Lux sent me this clip of this guy coming out and what he has to say about Jeffree Star. And then I will, if I still have it in here, I will include the clip of Jeffree Star responding to this. So I will be back in 2 and 2.
Is trafficking people, boys. I don't want to do this, but like I'm having a hard time like processing fully like what has happened to me over the course of the last month or so with like Jason and Jeffree Star. Like how like I didn't like my brain is having a hard time like fully wrapping itself around the fact that they groomed me and tried to like traffic me and to like pimp me out. Like, I don't know. They want me to be quiet, of course. If you want me to be quiet, find me an apartment, Jeffree Star. Find me an apartment. I'll do your little skin frost reviews. But like, that's still not going to change the fact that like you literally tried to traffic me, and you sent an OnlyFans model, a not very intelligent OnlyFans model, to be like my handler. And I feel like I have a right to speak up for myself. I feel like I have a right to... There are no words. Like, there are no words. Like, I don't know how to process this. Like, I made an appointment today to see, like, a psychiatrist because, like, these people have fully, like, messed up my mind and my brain. And I had so much work. So many things that I wanted to do, so many things that I wanted to create when I got out here, and these people destroyed my life. I don't think they fully realized who I was at the time. I'm sure they know now, but like, there needs to be consequences. There are going to be consequences for this, because this is not okay. And I don't know who else this has happened to. There are a couple other boys, probably about like my age, who have like kind of hinted that Jeffree Star has done this to them as well. And they're kind of obviously wanting to kind of keep quiet about it. But like, I cannot. Like, you sent... You had Jason force his way into my life when I was already kind of down and out. You had him groom me so that you could traffic and pimp me out to... And now you want me to review products for you. Free skin frost. How about you pay for an apartment for me here, since I'm sleeping on the street in Los Angeles? I would love to get a job, but nobody's gonna hire me because I've been walking around. I've been walking up and down the street in the same clothes for a week and a half. Luckily, I have managed to meet a couple people who have been able to help me out. Thank God, literally. But like, there needs to be consequences, because this is not okay. And this cannot continue. Like, I don't really have anything else to lose at this point. So, yeah. I don't know.
So that's why people on the internet live for fake rumors. I know, it's very weird. But the good news is my lawyers don't play games. You know?
Okay, so there you go. So I feel several different ways about the situation. And I'm not going to really comment on the footage. You guys can have your response to that in the comment section below if you want to. The way I feel about it is this, is that I feel that we live in this world today, right, where these are very, very serious situations. These are, for the victim or the alleged, they are life-ruining, career-ruining situations that, you know, for somebody that is alleged these things, if there's, I mean, where do you say, like, what do you, how do you prove that, right? So for the person that's alleged, anybody can come out today and say, well, this person did this to me, or this person did that to me. I don't think that it holds as much weight as it did 5 years ago, and I think that we as a society have done that. I think we have watered down what those implications, those allegations, and those words mean. I think we have as a society. So for the person that those things are alleged against, right, it leaves them in kind of a precarious situation, because then we're back here just having an opinion about did they or did they not do that, right? Which 20 years ago, that's not how a situation like that would be handled. I mean, we are literally in the court of public opinion. That's where all this lives. Because a lot of victims don't ever want to come forward, because victims are not believed much of the time. You know, we have full-on victims sharing their stories with evidence, and they're still not believed, you know, because they're not the perfect victim. They don't look like what we want them to look like. I've shared this before. I used to work with the Department of Corrections. I used to work with a lot of attorneys back in the day, and attorneys would tell their clients, before you go to court, okay, as addicts, as whatever, as, you know, victims of abuse, wear this suit, wear this dress, put your hair a certain way. Look, the word that we use today, demure, right? Look demure. They used that word 35 years ago, you know, they did back then. I can remember going to court, you know, and being like, for myself, you know, and being like, okay, had to wear a tie. Yes, sir, no, sir, to the judge, and things like that, right? So when you're talking about law enforcement, which a lot of people don't trust law enforcement today, and then you're going into law enforcement and you're putting, I mean, I would love that in a world that we live in, that if you went into the police office, that you would be met with compassion and empathy, okay? And put in contact with a police officer that is trained in these kind of situations to take these allegations seriously. And that is the case in some situations, but not all situations. And so victims do not trust this process. And so then victims don't want to come forward, right? But it leaves us in this very precarious situation where anybody can say whatever they want to say about any kind of influencer out there, and then we're just left with our opinions about it, okay? But then on the other side, there are, and the other thing that's come out is that there's all of these allegations that there's no bearing in truth to whatsoever, you know? At the time that James Charles situation happened, Def Noodles was listing every allegation that came out. Well, the majority of them were found to not be true at all. That was what James Charles used as his excuse that all these people are making up these allegations. Well, a lot of people do make up these allegations, right? The people that make up these allegations are doing harm on two levels. They are doing harm to the person that they're alleging the allegations to, but they're also taking away the story of the victim. They're taking away the believability of any victim down the road. So then that leaves us in a situation of, well, what do we do in a situation like this? You know, do we just not pay any attention? Do we not, you know, care about it? Do we not question it? Do we not ask it? Do we not look at a history of pattern of behaviors that's happened through the years? Is there any, you know, what do we do with this? You know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was believe every victim. Now we're on the flip side of that because of James Charles and Coin Ballinger. And it's like, well, we don't believe every victim. We question some victims. That victim is definitely not believable because they're not the perfect victim, like I talked about, right? So we're not in that stance anymore. And then people have taken advantage of that. And so it's, what do we do in this precarious situation? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I have the answer to that. I don't. But I do know that more allegations are going to come out about people like Jeffree Star and James Charles. And are we so immune to it? I mean, I've said this in a lot of videos. If tomorrow some huge allegation came out of it against James Charles, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Because I don't believe that he's changed, you know? I mean, he rewrote history in the Cosmopolitan article that came out last summer or a year ago. And, you know, and acts like none of this happened and took down the video, and people believe him. People have forgotten. You know, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, I don't even really know the story of what happened. My daughters were teenagers at that time. They knew James Charles. They bought the Morphe palette, whatever. But, like, you know, they're grown. They don't follow that stuff anymore, you know? So this is where people say, nobody cares about Dramageddon anymore. Well, we should. And this is where we talk about the lessons of history and that history repeats itself. We should, right? We should remember, number one, when I was talking about the HIV stuff, we should remember why it was important for the LGBTQI plus community, not just gay men, okay? Because it was the trans activists that were getting the rights for gay men, right? Which is why we, as gay men, need to have the backs of trans people today, all right? It was lesbians that were working, you know, in the facilities with gay men that had HIV and AIDS back in the day. HIV and AIDS unified the LGBTQI plus community, all right? We can't forget that. We can't forget that at all, that we were unified back in the day, and forget our unity and get broken apart over all these different things today. We can't, right? Or our rights will be stripped away from us one by one, number one. Number two, we have to remember that history repeats itself. You know, and we've seen situations like this happen in the past. I'm not talking about the Jeffree Star situation right now. I'm talking about overall. We've seen this. We've seen a simple picture with 4 people flipping off their finger turn into this and that and all these different allegations to the point where it gets so muddied that nobody cares about these allegations anymore. They don't mean anything. They don't mean anything at all. You know, and then the question is, well, should we care or should we not care? Do we care about these people? Do we not? You know, when I was rolling through Jeffree Star's, like, TikTok last night, going through, watching people talk about Jeffree Star, there was all these people on there, all these young people that were like, oh my God, like, Jeffree Star, this, I love him so much, and, you know, this palette, and that palette, and all this kind of stuff. All these young people. And I went over and I was like, is it the same for James Charles? And it is. There's tons of people that were 9 and 10 when all the allegations happened with James Charles that are now, like, in high school, you know, or they were 10 or 11 at the time. They don't remember what it was like in real time, you know? They don't remember. Part of the reason why, like the Diddy situation, well, there's tons and tons of evidence, obviously, or the Kevin Spacey situation is Kevin Spacey was a grown adult, you know, that people at that time that were coming, I mean, we were all adults watching House of Cards and had watched his movie, you know, you're talking about people that their main audience is a lot of younger people that are impressionable and that they forget and they move on and they don't care over a period of time. I didn't. The people that I cared about at 16 were not the same people that I cared about at 22 at all. And definitely not after I got sober. You know, the people that I was interested in pop culture. So they're relying on that, you know? But I think this watering down, I think we need to maybe reevaluate the using of these words. So anyway, let me know what you thought about all that in the comment section below. I love you guys and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.